You know, a hot yoga class could kind of like, that's where like the threshold of the chaos could go to some type of quote unquote war front, end quote, energetically, and then some order could be found there. So that's kind of like the hot yoga thing. And the classes vary based on how you show up. So the classes will always be different, where you go, who's kind of alert with for you, aware for you in that in their own levels. And coming obviously, making it a note to come more prepared and hydrated. And we all do the same shit in the hot yoga class, but obviously like yoga in general is like, be kind of like hint mindfulness obviously, but when someone leaves a yoga class, it's because the collective energies could have just got their own psyche of them and how they're like, and how that has a metaphysical connection, and how we're influenced by different quote unquote like beings of energy, and further away energy, end quote, and that being like some type of like inner dream of where the dream and this quote unquote illusion, end quote, like connect to something that is kind of mutative, and that mutative thing is its own like misunderstood, I guess, reality in 3D respectively, and even in other like, shades, I guess you could say. But why someone would leave a class is because the collective energies of that particular class that they're participating in it's what it's doing to the individual. If the person leaves the class, it's because like, it depends how open you are, and from that openness, based on your own depth and definition, that depth and definition gets reflected from your openness to your definedness of self, and then I guess that could be, kind of pointed out in the centers of your human chakra body system graph or whatever. And one could leave the class because the collective energies have kind of like reciprocated and having some type of quote unquote mirroring effect, end quote, energetically speaking, of just like how your openness is reflecting the collective energies of said class. And as it's doing that, some people are more subtly sensitive to like, how people could like have some type of just a not good, not bad, but a unique imposition of like who and what they are behind the scenes, and that ultimately representing, low key, which we really, really forgot, is a unique oneness of source, because the source of the oneness of the universe, it's more of a thing in the real backwards realm, because that's what, original energetic quote unquote non-duality is, end quote. It's the oneness of God and all of his shit always. That's the difference between like this respective, like the human use of it, and then just it be connected to all these different things, quote unquote 24 different principle tests of said cosmic arena area or whatever, end quote. And within that, it's like that's already been a thing though, from like a different standpoint. And as that's going on, the human is resetting and having a unique amnesia to that, to experience contrast, and like and from that contrast different paradoxes arise. And you could say that like the paradox of Cancer season could be just like, running quote unquote, vampires in the forest, end quote. No particular movie said here, because I want to lean towards more unbiasedness within just picking favorites of narratives. But so like different types of biases and unbiases is we don't have to be, we don't have to play favoritism to like a certain idea on top of a certain theme or topic, because like it's all pointing on a subtle level, it's all pointing to a different oneness reality of how these quote unquote fictional stories, end quote, they're actually like, they're coming from a certain unique realm of the imagination, and that imagination is connected to a dream, and that's more real than we think, and it could reflect in certain thresholds of the 3D, no judgment. But maybe but that's not necessarily true though. I'm just saying it's a quote unquote hypothesis, end quote, or something of that nature. So I'm not saying that's a thing. So it's like, it's a particular disclaimer of like, don't misinterpret or misunderstand what's attempted to be intuitively, understood, and intuitively kind of like seeing it's not always like as literal as we could think it is, and, but like, shout out to God, the healing force that is there, that force that does heal, that is if that is an intelligence behind that which heals, then that would be some type of fucking like secret, most high, benevolent God, quote unquote benevolent, but some type of, and that's the thing, that word is just kind of like, it's very kind of like, it has a particular etymological type of quote unquote spell, end quote, because it's its own like arrangement of how we're using a certain word code, and we give meaning to that, and now it's like this thing in like a part of the psyche somewhere, like some type of advanced quote unquote meta psychology, end quote, like in a different, wherever meta was originally kind of originated, we have to find that place, because what if quote unquote meta, end quote, was used like like somewhere like, it's not even, sometimes you don't even have to bring time into the equation, because there's things that go beyond time. So obviously we could say like, if you want to include the integer of time, then you would have to like need to follow up on some type of causal evidence just for the logistical of when did things happen and how long ago did it happen, like on some higher original galactic artificial intelligence type of shit. Because with that original galactic artificial intelligence type of shit, it could see how like something of a quote unquote just a word combination of sounds and utterances making a word, and we like creating a unique chain of language from that, different, all these different words are kind of like structured in one language, and that language is focusing and catering to our certain like very unique demographic and even esoteric demographic behind the scenes of just like where the humans are at within that geopolitical terrain of where they're at, and how it's kind of more or less, there's like casual cross mixings of like how other languages, how other higher quote unquote benevolent United Nations, end quote, could kind of on a different, deeper level, on a different even quote unquote timeline, end quote, is languages, they could intermix for the better, because obviously like there's just confusion in the world, and from that confusion we're acting just like on a basic synergy like level, on a basic synergistic level, with all respects to the energy, is like where it's like as is things, like people are acting out of pocket because they're in a relationship with it, like their unique like confusion, delusion, and illusion within wherever they found themselves entering the matrix and exiting the matrix, and before even entering the matrix, like them like going into like a whole different like dream matrix, and we all came to 3D differently, And as that is all being said, we could then kind of see like we could then take out the biases of just a word in itself, because if we take out the biases in a word, then we don't have to have a unique reaction to a word spell, we don't have to have a unique emotion to a word spell, and we don't have to have a unique misunderstanding to that word, and that will make us go beyond just a particular type of psychological confusion that we could be running, because and I went on that tangent because like what we don't know what real God is. That's why, like, and if we don't know what real God is, then we're just, without us even knowing it, regardless of how even serious you are, you could still, on a side note of you having, wherever you're uniquely conditioned to even get to such state, is there is, there's just certain illusions, fanciful thinking, fanciful, like kind of following up on like narratives that don't even hold anything, and they're just distractions to something else of like God's plan. And if you can't find God's plan, you're going away from God's plan. Have a fun life, like I wish everyone the best though, at the same time, because it's like if they're saying we're going to die, then why are people acting like that's not going to happen? But like, I obviously understand how like life is just going to live itself out. But like, if we don't go to the proper trajectory, then all your aims of your alms will be for what, it will all be for like, like what's the point of like life if you're not going to like help save yourself, because you care about your life. So it's like an energetic, it's like an energetic, I give a F, about me, like, so if someone were to leave, a class, it's because the collective energies, like we don't have to participate in other people's like, collective like overwhelm. And if for some reason, so it's like choosing like, how to take care of yourself, and like everyone does the same shit, because someone could, obviously it's obvious that like someone could make a fucking complaint just on a standard level. And the thing that's kind of like ironic within like all these tech companies, they don't really make it easy, even though they're saying they're making it easy. People don't make it easy for us to actually fucking solve even like minute problems, or if you would so like to call it that, like just the general like concerns and how we could detect like false websites, false promotions. That's a concern to be raised. And within that concern, what real shit is actually doing that shit to actually not fucking like energetically fucking quote unquote, I want to be nice because like I don't want to say, oh, you're disgracing it, I didn't say that, but it's like we're kind of like we're like kind of like not, we're kind of downplaying the tech. And how and like what does that mean, like downplaying in just like a particular like quote unquote metaphysical perspective, end quote? Well, there are many, many different things, quote unquote, a certain context of a quote unquote bug, end quote, but it doesn't have to be like a literal bug or a particular bug. It could just be like kind of like something of like a metaphorical floating, fleeting bug that's not there. Someone doesn't have a critical intelligence to even point out the fucking concern to begin with, to even alleviate any type of fucking surface level human frustration to begin with. So that's why on some other shit, that's on some real sabertooth shit, like for real, like if you read in between the lines of it. Because if someone's initiating the solution so the problem doesn't motherfucking occur, then that problem won't have to be there in the future, saving pain, unnecessary shit, unnecessary mental stress for on the collective general level, MFer. So that's one pure example of why I am the casual savior and the original star. First, so we don't have to call the intelligence behind healing God, but it could be something like that, like a pure God, and that pure God is beyond the definition of how we fucking see God. Exclamation point blank. Exclamation. Point blank exclamation. So, because, and that's, there's no judgment there. It's just seeing what level the collective psychology is within the fucking humans of that which lean towards conditioning, different conditionings, and going towards more conditioning. Because human design, it's not saying that everyone's going to be free from conditioning. No, some people's future is just to be with conditioning because that's what they fucking resonate with. They're going towards conditioning. They're not seeing different subtle truths. And as they're not entertaining good, balanced truths, they're going away from that. And they're going towards some type of narrative of conditioning. Welcome to the fattest truth on the motherfucking internet. On a supreme frequential like level, though. And like, I get how other people are just in their, like, you know, in their quote unquote, you know, rage, even raging psychology, even, you know, they're you know, they're inebriating, you know, cerebral mutative type of, like, you know, meta unthrobbing kind of, like, pulsating type of, like, you know, just inebriation of how people are in their own, like, physiological mutation within the reality. And that mutation is, you know, are we doing these like shadow works, you know, are we like, or are we misdirecting our focus and attention to some shit that is just conditioning you because you're just kind of like you're just subscribing to shit. You're just subscribing to fragmented, ignorant confusion, ignoring pure truth, so that could use you and you could be a metaphysical puppet to that. So that's why I'm the casual savior. And I've heard all the fucking behind the scenes shit. Like, the irony is I transcend the joke. That's the black and white irony right there. I'm the one that's transcending the clowns. I'm the one that's transcending the joke. I'm the one that's transcending the falsehoods on a pure level, and I'm beyond all of the prophecies. That's been proven underground 8 years ago. And before that, and before that, and before that, and seeing how God is within the neutrality between the extreme good and the extreme bad. And this is God's mechanics, and this is God's test. I'm not claiming to be anything. I'm just seeing that universal balance of it. And we could do whatever the fuck we want because there's free will, or is there, according to an advanced human design perspective. Because if an advanced human design perspective could prove there's no free will, then by all means, please do so, and then explain why I'm able to do what I'm able to do and why you're able to do what you're able to do, and or explain why you're able to do what you're not able to do, and explain why I'm not able to do based on you proving that there is no free will. See, that's why I'm like the highest quote unquote like intellectual being of conversational, you know, alleviation solution oriented conversations, because I'm the one like I'm the one like originally initiating it on different levels. And you know, like there's a collective initiative and a collective front that could subscribe to a balance. That's the esoteric metaphysical hope. There's beings who choose to have intelligence. Let me check the battery. Okay, it's all right. Let me see, what's the number? Ooh, I'm not gonna say the number. 57. But the collective intelligence here is like saying that there's not a collective intelligence, you know, or it's like lesser, you know, it's lesser. And I'm saying that because the collective intelligence could lean towards something of a solution based approach, and on a just a basic measured level within like the congruency or the non-congruency of like just neighboring beings, they're choosing they're not necessarily subscribing to the world's solutions though. So it's not even necessarily like this war is happening with this war, that war is happening with that war. No, the bigger picture is there's some amplitude of some type of, there is free will. Like, so, like, because like it's really important to ask if there's free will or not. But I think it's like not a matter of like if we have free will or not. I think it's about where we have more free will, and we do have some small percentage of free will here. And the free will is actually the metaphysical neutral heaven in itself, because you're willing your own freeness, and you have a will to be free, and you're seeing the freeness of the wheel, and you're seeing the freeness of your will to do that stuff. So that's the essence of free will. And on a neutral level, beyond all of your swamis. And I'm saying that for the progressive solution, because if you swamis don't recognize the trajectory thing and whether there's going to be a progressive timeline or not, then literally on a direct, mature level, there's a lack of a particular critical intelligence with the point I just aforementioned on an esoteric, mature level, without me having the intent to offend you, but just seeing it on a particular aspect, awakening you to collective intelligence, towards collective solutions, towards collective reality. That's not necessarily spoken of most respectively by any of the swamis, respectively. They're just, and no judgment. They're just focused on like the physical yoga, the Kriya yoga, the Raja yoga. And that Raja yoga, like kind of like them remixing it and then polishing that to fucking go towards, not original, service yoga, devotion yoga, and then like, there, and then just like, and no judgment with like, no judgment with the, the jnana yoga goes so deep. That's why the jnana yoga is like that fucking air and element, so the jnana yoga, it's like, there's always a deeper depth, you could say, respectively, because obviously, like, eventually, like, all of the quote unquote swamis, end quote, they're ultimately, if they're in the 3D reality, they're leading themselves to start with some type of Raja yoga, because that Raja yoga is that physical work of it, right? Like, of your physical human self, and how that human self like touches upon other different types of like, material selves. And that Raja yoga kind of like being kind of like, establishing itself through all of the, tradition, the yogic traditions and the Vedic traditions, through some type of like surface level, like, creation of the Raja yoga in itself, respectively. And then, the devotion yoga, we're all like, we're all kind of like, we're always devoted to like these higher forces, but we forgot our particular relationship with the higher forces beyond the humans, respectively. And then from that, we're always there's always something to like, be worked through, But I'm trying to see like the standard kind of like, cause all like low key, like one, what do you call that? Initiatory phase of even quote unquote, Advaita Vedanta, end quote. And I say quote unquote, cause I'm not a master in there. I'm just seeing life as the bigger picture. And I'm also seeing particularly like even quote unquote Advaita Vedanta, end quote, in like without a doubt, like inevitably and undoubtedly, it has its own touch of Raja yoga, because Raja yoga is the physical working of it. And it, for us to be human, there's a physical working. You have to take care of yourself still. You have to have the hygiene, right? You have to like brush yourself up, right? You have to do some type of movement, physical work. So all of this shit, there's a neutral kind of sense of Raja yoga with all of the Advaita Vedanta traditions, all of them, all the traditions have some type of mix of the Raja Yoga, because the humans are dependent on the Raja Yoga, because the Raja Yoga is the self-care and the hygiene in itself that is just on a human level millions of years ago. And that Raja Yoga, like, we all start from that, even if we don't know we're starting with that. Like, whether if you're a non-duality student, like, you could say, like, that's nothing, right? It's a dream and you're just witnessing that, and all of that, all of this Raja Yoga is just actually like a dream in God's mind, and the Raja Yoga is just like, it's somehow, it's like, because obviously creation is infinite, so like, how, there's not necessarily critical depth sometimes in these speakers just claiming titles respectively that are not necessarily, like, progressive respectively, and they're just taking titles. Like, they're not seeing the infinite, like, creation of things, and like, and they're kind of just like having like this conditioned version of just kind of like, kind of just like seeing, like, how it could be used in such a, like, in such a fragmented, like, micronalized type of way, when it's like, we're students of the vast forever. So it's like, how could anybody be like how is God, like, really seeing, like, how like, how someone has advanced in that, and and for whatever reason, why do they have an amnesia, a particular amnesia? Because it's just a new version reflecting what we are on a different level. But still, the Raja Yoga, it's still like kind of like the Raja Yoga within the Advaita Vedanta. It's still like, it's like a filler reality. It's like a tester reality, because, like, you could say, like, ask the Advaita Vedanta people, like, is this 3D reality a false reality or a true reality? What would they say? So if they say it's a true reality, they would see how there's still, like, some order and objectivity from that true reality. And if they would say it's a false reality, they would completely dismiss it and see, like, they would somehow unconsciously say it's aloofness, when that has no order, or like it has no order or objectivity. And if they're saying it has no order of objectivity, then they're dismissing a different piece of objectivity, which, quote unquote, non-duality should include, right? End quote. So you can't necessarily say the 3D reality is a false reality. You could say the 3D reality is a lesser false reality or a lesser real reality, but you can't say it's completely false, because you're still here living the objective mechanics of the 3D reality, and you're just kind of like conforming to say, and kind of and quote unquote regurgitating, end quote, respectively, that you're just kind of like not seeing the critical thinking of, like, they're just saying this reality is a dream, it's an illusion. And I've explained it in a different aspect of, like, yeah, that is true, but it's also not true at the same time, because there's still some type of, like, mechanical effect and output from a different input and to a different cause, making it some type of level of the dream, level of the dharma, level of the levels, type of shit. So 3D, particularly according to the Vedic cosmological map, it's smack dab in the middle. It's extreme truth, extreme falsehood, and somehow the truth and the falsehood could be fluid, or it could be, somehow it's a physical thing, and since that truth and falsehood could be that, if it's like more fluid, then it could play out in just like the material in the material vessels of the 3D, and hence the grand experiment of, like, people are just kind of like paying attention to illusions, delusions, and confusions, and that's ultimately creating them circumstances. That's ultimately low-key creating their circumstances on a low-key level, and on those low-key levels, they're getting their own traction and accumulation, and kind of what is actually being affected from a particular cause, from a particular, like, genetic elemental type of inner blasting, inner working, inner energetically twerculating, end quote, type of like, you know, exchange of different genetic chemical like elements within the human body, because God is the original. God is like the origin of it all, you know, behind all the titles and shit like that. So why one would leave a yoga class? Is, you know, other people's stuff is other people's stuff, you know, and whatever they want to put and try to project on another person, that's their own shit, you know. But like, we could see with higher intelligence, is it some confused ass condition shit, or is it some real wanting to have a clarity within that shit and see actually like what God is, you know, God being that fucking thing in between good and bad, you know, and us kind of just not knowing it, and not knowing that's his shit, and not knowing that like that is, if there's free will or not free will, then that would be important to know, because if we know if there's free will or not free will, then we know that paradoxically this is a dream, and paradoxically we don't have free will, and paradoxically this is a false illusion, and none of this is real, because it's like, it's just a part of a movie of God's mind, and as it's a part of a movie of God's mind, we're just a effect of different bursts of post and pre-creation, and we're just kind of riding on the wave of what God already did. And we all, at the end of the day, all we could really do is be grateful and work and serve the original universal God, because this is all the shit. And if we don't, like, then that's just, you have a confused trajectory or clarity trajectory, and everything else is just, you know, imposed confusion of some original fucking shit, dude. Because I'm trying to balance the paradox of like, okay, I understand how they're putting it like this, like reality is a dream, like we're just like, there's no choice, you know, there in a particular way, that there's a particular initiator, and that initiator is the director of all this shit, and that director is doing what it's doing, whether we like it or not, whether we know it or not, and we're just reflecting a microcosm of that shit. And however we've been in the past yuga of the past Kali Yuga matrix, and how we could either reincarnate into that or out of that based on where it's going in its own standard, you know, middle timeline of it having its own collective free will to steer itself collectively to a good timeline or not timeline, the most raw fucking truth in the fucking galaxy, without a fucking doubt, motherfuckers. Be purely neutral, for real. So it's like, you know, so someone said Stockholm syndrome at the end of the yoga class, and I'm like, nah, you know, that's just a filter to some past Kali Yuga shit. No, it's actually about real purity, metaphysically, you know, because the yoga, and it's funny because I do these things after the yoga class, because like, I just got to see what the energies are doing in that yoga class. So the energies that be doing in that yoga class, it's like someone at the end of the class, they said Stockholm syndrome. So I was like, oh shit. And I was thinking, like, for some reason, my pure mind in one sense inside, I was like thinking like there's just an unknown purity, you know? And what I mean by that unknown purity is we're going through different filters of life, and that filter, the trajectory is underrated, because we don't know where someone else has traveled, you know, respectively. And if we don't know where someone else has traveled, then we're just kind of like, we're going to kind of like write them off of as them not valuable, because everyone could carry some type of value, because this is God's dream, this is God's movie. That's like, and we're just kind of we're just barely realizing that truth, because for us to ultimately be free, we actually like, we have to like really have like, it's like God's testing like a particular detachment, it seems like. Because once we have that particular detachment, then things could actually like, then you could actually like kind of be okay with certain things that happen. But that doesn't necessarily go to say that don't be prepared for like, you know, certain like emergencies, because within the crux of it, of the 3D reality, I believe, like, paradoxically, we don't have free will in some cases, but honestly on a micro level we do. On a small percentage we do have free will, because we have a chance for our intuition to rest and wake up to a realm, in the dream realm, where there is more of a quote unquote, you know, just a different type of, you know, free will, right? Will free. The will is free, right? Non-duality in its modernality. Yo, I bring this back, pure infancy like hood. You could call it babyality. Yo, zebra shit. Scrutinize this elusified mayfly. Yo, you knew you could see it in my eyes that I was a different type of pie. Rectify, fruitify. Yo, saying fire back in 2009, motherfucker. I was a wave before your 2016 crack shit pop off type of parties that you already had every year. My higher self was here everywhere. Oh. Okay. Anyways, we it's good to see how we have free will and how we don't have free will. How this reality is real, and how this reality is a dream, and how the reality is a dream is because it's just kind of like different reflections from different reflections, and that reflection isn't necessarily like the true fucking because it's like, what is it's the spark of some type of consciousness that's witnessing the clay. What is the witness of the clay, you know? Because we see the clay, somehow we are the clay, so the clay is somehow coming from us. So we're coming from, the clay is like it's like a post-creation of us being the witnessing consciousness. So us being the witnessing consciousness, we're in our own individual, subjective, you know, quote unquote, infancy, end quote, of us being reflections of God, everything being reflections of God, and the 3D just being a micro representation of right in the middle of God. 3D 50-50 Vedic cosmological map, 3D reality. That 3D reality, there's dream shit in it, there's not dream shit in it. 3D reality, there's truth shit in it, there's not truth shit in it. 3D reality, there's confusion shit in it, there's clarity shit in it. 3D reality, there's, you know, somehow there's comfort in it, and somehow there's not comfort in it. The essence of the Vedas. Thank you guys, have a great life.